Come on, Bon. Hey Bonnie, a few weeks ago I went with my family on a trip to San Francisco. So this video I just wanted to talk about some of the fun things we did. The first 2 days we were there, my mom, my sister, and I were exploring the city. We walked about 12 miles in total our first day. We just sort of wandered the streets. Walking around in San Francisco is tiring. As you're walking up and up, you get a better and better view. So we climbed and climbed and climbed all the way up to Coit Tower, which is this tower that sits at the top of a hill, and it has great views of the city. You can see the Bay Bridge, the Golden Gate Bridge, you can see Alcatraz, and you really feel like you're on top of the world standing at the top of this tower. We walked up to that famous San Francisco windy road. People were standing in the middle of the road. We eventually wound our way over to the Ghirardelli chocolate factory, where they have a small display showing how the chocolate's made, and we had some sugar to keep us going. And then we walked and we took a bus over to the Golden Gate Bridge. As a mechanical engineer, I am awed by its beauty, structurally, mechanically. So many years ago, someone figured out how to keep this thing standing. And the next day, we got up and we rode a cable car. I did not realize that the cable cars are actually holding onto cables under the street. But we rode our cable car to the Cable Car Museum. And it's not only a museum, it actually has the inner workings of the cable cars. There's cables running constantly, and the cars have to reach down and they latch onto the cable and get tugged along. I did not realize that at all. So we walked some more, and we wound up in the Haight-Ashbury area, which was cool to see. And then we went over to the cliffs and saw this camera obscura, which is basically just a giant lens. The top spins around so you can see a 360 view of the waves crashing and people running along the beach. And it's a live image. The resolution of the image is perfect because it's purely capturing what's around there. And then we went to the Golden Gate Park, which isn't really near the Golden Gate Bridge. We checked out a Japanese garden. There were a lot of miniature trees, just so much plant life. It was beautiful. So then the next day we got up and we went to the Maker Fair, which is what my dad had been doing for the previous days. It's a fair that kind of shows off the artsy side of science and engineering. I think it was a fun experience to go to, but I don't think I would ever do it again. I think it's really directed at kids, get them excited about math and science and engineering. And I think it does that very well. There's kids running around. But for me, as someone who's working in the field of engineering, I don't get to do any of this flashy stuff. A lot of the stuff that is shown at fairs like these don't necessarily have practical use. You know, there's certainly other things going on that are partly artful and also partly useful. Like 3D printing has changed the world a lot. It really focused on the beauty of it rather than the utility of it, which I wish wouldn't be so prominent in some of these fairs. I wish the engineering and the science and the usefulness of it would be first, and then the beauty of it would just come naturally afterwards. Anyways, it was fun. The next day we took off for north of the city. We crossed the Golden Gate Bridge, did some exploring up there. We drove to Muir Woods, where we saw lots and lots and lots and lots of trees. Just these giant redwood trees. They climb up to the sky and you feel so small. But then at one point we were walking along and we looked down and we saw baby foxes curiously poking their noses out, which made me feel a little bit less small. So we walked along a nice hike through these woods. We left the woods and we drove to Stinson Beach. The beach wasn't really anything special except that it was surrounded by mountains on all sides. And the next day we went and we did a wine tasting. The vineyard that we went to prides themselves on very natural kind of farming. Not only grow just the grapes that you want, but you plant other trees and things to promote bird life and insect life that you want and to get rid of the pests that way. And though I'm not really a fan of wine, I did appreciate the science behind it. After our tasting, we went to jail. And by that, I mean we took a tour to Alcatraz. The boat ticket to get to Alcatraz comes with a free audio guide. You put on these headphones and you press play and you're surrounded by the voices of former convicts who are talking about their time at Alcatraz. And you walked up and down these halls of jail cells, and with all the tourists walking around, I guess I could imagine it filled with inmates. One of the things that really struck me from the audio guide was the fact that the inmates could look out the windows, or when they were outside in the yard, they could look across the bay and they would see the city of San Francisco. And one of the inmates in the audio guide said something like, there wasn't a day that went by that you didn't see what you were missing out on. I can imagine how much it would have tortured them to stand there and looking out at San Francisco and imagining how their lives could have been different. And yet it was too expensive to maintain this prison, and so now it's a tourist attraction. I would definitely recommend visiting Alcatraz. And then the rest of our time we spent hanging out with family. Overall, Bonnie, I'd say the San Francisco trip was a success. Anyway, Bonnie, I hope you're having a great week, and I'll see you soon. Business cards and the Charlie card.